disciple of Jesus is being called by Jesus to call others for Jesus so they can become more like Jesus. Being a disciple is us being called by Jesus to call others for Jesus so we all can be more like Jesus. It's a cycle that spreads exponentially. Kind of like a virus. We're all very familiar with that. And how that spreads. We need to infect people with the love of Jesus. That is our call as Christians. There are many specific arenas through which we can live out our discipleship call. But it's not generally sitting in here on Sunday morning. Worship happens here on Sunday morning. But discipleship happens out there, beyond these walls. Every arena of our lives becomes a chance to prove that we are truly disciples of Jesus. We're going to discuss today what it means, what it might mean for us to take seriously Jesus' call to be his disciples in our workplaces. In our workplaces. Now, I know a lot of you are retired in here, so you're like, well, this doesn't apply to me. It means all work, volunteer, paid, otherwise. Anything you do that's not sitting at home, chilling out, falls under this heading. Let me start this morning by pointing the finger directly at pastors. There's a story. A pastor preached a sermon on honesty one Sunday. On Monday, he took the bus to get to his office. He paid the fare, and the bus driver gave him back too much change. During the rest of the journey, the pastor was rationalizing how God had provided him with some extra money he needed for the week. But he just could not live with himself. And before he got off the bus, he said to the driver, "You have made a mistake. You've given me too much money." And he proceeded to give the driver back the extra money. The driver smiled and said, "There was no mistake. I was at your church yesterday and heard you preach on honesty, so I decided to put you to the test this morning." I often wonder if I am representing Jesus well in my work. I know some of you wonder that too. But trust me, nobody is more critical of this than I am of myself. I promise you this. I wonder constantly if I am representing Jesus well in my work. Now, for me, you think that'd be a no-brainer? Of course, I'm a disciple of Jesus. It's baked into the job, right? But pastors are human too. With all the limitations, temptations, inclinations, and thoughts as every other person in the world. Heck, dealing with church people puts my discipleship to the test daily. But in all seriousness, I am constantly concerned about whether I am representing Jesus in my work as a person who is truly devoted to him. It's important to me that I represent my great future well. And as you can see in the story I told a second ago, people see Jesus well beyond these walls when they know I'm a pastor. So when I am not representing him as a faithful disciple, it has very definite consequences for the kingdom of God. That is a huge responsibility. It's heavy. Just remember that the next time you feel nitpicky about whether or not the bulletin was right. I have much bigger concerns. And that is every time I step outside of these walls, I literally represent Jesus to a whole population of people. So you. Let's just be blunt. Everyone in this room knows that there have been times in my life that I have not represented Jesus well. Nobody knows that more than me. And let's take it another step further. The revelation of some of these instances has made it impossible for some people to ever take what I have to say about Jesus, his love, and the call on our Christian lives seriously. All that to say, there are people who know things about me who will never listen to a word I have to say about Jesus, regardless of how much I love them. Never. The fruit of my work is constantly put to the test. Sometimes I have failed the test. And when I fail the discipleship test, people are turned away from Jesus. I pray to God every single day that those people who are turned away from Jesus because of me are drawn toward Jesus by another person who can show them another example. Not a better one, a different one. Because there are people who are turned away by the person that I am. Yes, that's true. But there are many people who are drawn towards Christ because of the person that I am. I am not for everyone, nor are you for everyone. But we are for the people that are drawn to us. I say all that to say this: I am acutely aware of how what I say and do compares to the witness I share as a pastor. I wonder constantly if I am representing Jesus well in my work, and I know that in many ways I am always on call to represent. Because we never get time off from being Jesus' disciple. Do you, like me, wonder what representing Jesus in your work looks like? And if you are answering that call well, are you serving Jesus at and through your work? And I don't mean just jobs, as I said before, paychecks. I mean jobs, hobbies, volunteer positions. Are you representing Jesus well throughout all of these things? Because, and hear me here, we are representing Jesus one way or the other. The question isn't whether we are representing Jesus. The question is, are we representing Jesus well? I can literally take any job and ask questions to get that answer, but I'll list a couple of them here. Teachers, there are lots of educators in this room, or former educators, or future educators. If you're a teacher here, are you showing your students love always? Even the ones that are hard to love, like I was. I was a student that was hard to love. Are you relating to your coworkers well? As Carmen pointed out, my wife is a teacher, so I know the kinds of stuff y'all talk about in the break room, in the teacher's lounge. Can't fool me. I've been a part of those conversations. I used to work in the schools. Do you think that the teacher you talk trash about is ever going to bother listening to you about faith or Jesus? Do you think the student who you show disdain for every day when they come into class is ever going to believe what you have to say about Jesus' love? If you have an office job, how do you relate to your coworkers? Do you sit around the water cooler and make fun of other coworkers like a bunch of middle schoolers? You're part of those conversations too. Are water coolers still a thing? I don't even know. I mean, we have one out there, but the only person I ended up talking to was Tony and Emmett. They don't have much to say on the matter. Or do we show people the proper respect that all humans are due? How well do we relate to our supervisors? Do you resent their position? Do you waste time when you should be fulfilling responsibilities because you don't respect the people in charge of you? I've had office jobs. So again, I know the kind of things that we do in those settings to be poor representatives of Jesus. If you're in customer service, done that too. I've done just about it. All those same questions and an additional one. Because it might be here more than anywhere else that you have the opportunity to represent Jesus. How are you relating to your customers? Are you being Jesus to them? Or are they just a means to an end? Like I said, insert any job or profession, and I could go on all day. The word or the question at hand is the same. Are you representing Jesus well in your work? Even though the context of today's Colossians passage uses a normalized view of slavery, the main point is still there. In all things, do them as though doing them for or to Jesus. This is a hard passage. It is a hard passage today. I mean, it's always been one, but especially here in our culture, this can be a passage that's difficult since it presupposes the legitimacy of slavery. Right? If slavery was a legitimate institution, it can't be avoided in this passage. It cannot, because it is. Paul is legitimizing slavery here, or the author of Colossians is. Our American brains likely wish to recoil from this language, so I want to briefly say a few things about how it's viewed here, so we can get past that specific relationship and focus on the main point. This also might help you in discussing passages that have contextual material that's nonsensical today. Like, we would never legitimize slavery as an institution, as a good thing, or even as a right thing, a thing that should happen. But this passage exists, right? And I'm sorry to say that not here or anywhere else do Paul or his followers specifically condemn the institution of slavery. They never do. Though in almost all of Paul's authentic letters, he spends a great deal of effort attempting to deconstruct social hierarchies in the pursuit of freedom in Christ. The reason slavery is not specifically condemned here has to do in part with expectations. Paul and his followers fully expected Jesus to return at any point. Their view of the end times was not some distant future. They thought it was happening in their lifetimes. This is very important in understanding passages like this one, that Paul thought it was happening in his lifetime. Most scholars believe that Paul would have spoken out against slavery directly had he not believed that the end of the current social order was at hand and that he would live to see it. He just didn't think it was important to upend that because he thought it was getting upended anyway. It was a waste of time for him. He was wrong. So put that one in your back pocket and remember it. Paul could be wrong. All of that said to say this, different cultural groups are going to have different feelings when they read a passage like this. Frankly, when black people read what looks like a command for slaves to submit to their masters because they're doing it for Jesus and not earthly rewards, whew. Take this a step further. When women are told to submit to their husbands for the same reason, and their minds go to instances of being second-class citizens in their own homes, or even worse, they all can be absolutely forgiven for thinking, to heck with that. This passage, taken out of its eschatological context, which just means the end-time view, this passage taken out of the specific end-time view of Paul, which these statements were made, passages for wives to submit to their husbands, children to submit to their parents, and slaves to submit to their masters, have been and continue to be used to suppress and oppress people in the name of God. Misuse of these passages has caused a lot of damage. However, put in their proper social, temporal, and literary eschatological context, we come to one of the foundational instructions we get in being disciples of Jesus, and that is, in all things, do them as though doing them for or to Jesus. But boy, we have to do a lot of digging to get there. We are to serve Jesus at and through everything we do, especially our work, because we spend so much of our time in that arena. Being a disciple of Jesus means being called to be like him in every aspect of our lives, not just the spiritual or religious activities we do. That is why I say discipleship isn't here, it's out there. It's easy to be spiritual here. It's easy to be religious here. It's easy to act like a disciple here. Although, with some of the side conversations I hear going on in this building sometimes, maybe not so easy. In fact, as a disciple of Jesus, everything we engage in, from the most mundane to the most grandiose, is a spiritual act. They're not separate. As I said earlier, we never get time off of being a disciple of Jesus. The question is whether we're being a good one or a bad one. So how do we do that? What practical ways can we be an everyday disciple in our work? Well, I would say it's this. Treat every person at work, whether it's a coworker, an angry customer, a supervisor, a subordinate, as though Jesus was in them or standing right there with them. Because when we see that what we do to people, we do to Jesus, we act differently. Supervisors, would you exploit Jesus for your own gain? Would you? Maybe you would. I doubt it. I doubt any of us here would say that. Yet, maybe we do it in our real lives. Workers, would you take advantage of Jesus just to get by? Would you fight back with an angry customer? Would you be the angry customer? Ooh, there's a good one. Remember that the next time you go through a drive-thru to get your order wrong. Remember, Jesus gave you that wrong burger. What are you going to do now? It doesn't mean you don't ask Jesus for the right burger. It just means maybe we ask a little bit nicer. Would you sit around the break room talking trash and belittling your coworkers as if it was Jesus you were talking about? Think every one of us has heard or been involved in some conversation where people are talking down about somebody. Would you be a part of that if it was Jesus you were talking about? Everything we do in word and deed is to be done as though it was Jesus himself doing it, because we represent Jesus. But everything we do in word and deed is to be done as though we are doing it to Jesus. Because we are. We act upon people. We are acting upon God. No, you are not God. But God is all and in all. We have the divine image within us. Every person, Christian or not. So the way we treat them is the way we are treating God. We do not get to separate that out. Because God didn't allow us to separate it out. We have to see Jesus and be Jesus. I've said it that way before here. We have to see Jesus and be Jesus. God is all and in all, and if you believe Jesus is God, which we do as Christians, then everything we do and every person we interact with at work is like interacting with God. What are you going to do? Imagine if we flipped the question of what would Jesus do to be what would we do to Jesus? Because that's the question. We know what Jesus would do. That's a really easy answer to figure out most of the time. Whatever the most loving, compassionate thing is. The question is, what would we do to Jesus? I know what they did to them 2,000 years ago. They nailed him to a cross for it. Are we going to continue to nail Jesus to a cross every day that we treat somebody poorly? Because that's what we're doing. We're saying your sacrifice wasn't enough. Have another day. That might be tough to stomach, but that is the truth. Imagine if we took every opportunity in our workplaces to see Jesus and be Jesus. Imagine if we went into every work interaction intentionally wanting to represent Jesus well. Imagine leaving those interactions knowing we had done so. This is a tough one because this takes practice. This takes effort. Going into each work interaction wanting to represent Jesus well takes prep. It means sometimes, especially for me, sometimes when I'm doing this here anyway, it means stopping for a moment to pray that I say the right thing, that I act in the right way, that I am Jesus to this person right now. Because a lot of those times we get into those situations, right? And we're already on the offensive. Like we're already ready to fight in the battle. If we are all ready to fight in battle, then we are not ready to be Jesus. So instead of just going in impulsively, maybe take a moment to pray. Not that the other person be changed, but that you be changed. Lord, calm me down. Help me see your face in their face. Imagine if we did that. If we do that, we're going to fail a lot less than we do now. And notice I keep using we, not you. This is not a you problem, this is an us problem. I am not immune to this. That's why I started this whole thing talking about pastors and me personally. I can do better at this. This will be one of those things that, along what John Wesley called our walk of Christian perfection, that will last us our lifetime. We will never nail this perfectly, but we can get better. We can get better. We aren't going to nail it every time. We're human. We screw up. It's a part of our imperfect nature. But that's where grace comes in. God has given us that grace. Imagine if we extended that same grace offered to us by our loving God to everyone else as well. Imagine if we were Jesus to people every day. Every week I say it, imagine if we did it. Man, this world would be such a better place. We always complain about how bad things are. What can I do? You can start by being Jesus to people. If everybody in this room took a whole week where they were nothing but Jesus to everyone they encountered, whether they deserved it or not, my goodness, the ripple of good that could come out of this place. So you get a choice this week in every interaction. Am I going to be snide and snippy and corrosive to the heart? Or am I going to be Jesus this week? I promise you that if you're Jesus this week, you'll come in here with a world slightly better than you go out of here today. Amen? Amen.